The alpha bracket of VCT lock-in has finally finished, with DRX and Loud emerging as the semi-finalists after 2 incredible series, especially Loud's win over NRG, which went to 3 maps, 2 overtimes, and 18-16 on the final map of Fracture. Crazy stuff. And as we look forward to the Omega bracket, there's even more banger matches to come. A clash between EU powerhouses Liquid and Na'Vi looks quite likely, Leviathan want to surprise people as a dark horse, and we finally get to see 100 Thieves again. But there's one match that stands out among the rest. A match that is almost destined to become one of the best in Valorant history. Foot versus RRQ. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's of course Sentinels versus Fnatic. There are so many reasons to watch and be excited for this match, not just TenZ. So today, I'll go through all the reasons why Sen vs Fnatic should be an incredible game at lock-in. And while I do, I'll simulate the match to see what the computer thinks the outcome will be. Will it be right? And will you agree? Let's find out. It's easy to forget that this is actually a long-awaited rematch. The last time Sentinels played Fnatic was in the Grand Finals of Masters Reykjavik, where Sentinels took the trophy home. Obviously the teams have changed a lot since then, but let's start with the side looking to get their revenge. Fnatic have been a staple in international Valorant since the beginning, but have somehow never reached the same heights as that Reykjavik Grand Final. Their highest placement since was 4th at Masters Copenhagen, but that was another tournament that fit into the pattern of Fnatic choking at international lands. They've got somewhat of a reputation for it now, especially in 2022. They dominated regional play for a good portion of last year, but it seems to all crumble once they take the stage. Reykjavik can be excused, considering 2 of their players couldn't actually play, but Copenhagen and especially Champions were definitely disappointing for Fnatic fans. Alpha had the support of all of Turkey behind him at Champions, but once again, they couldn't pull it out of the bag. Every time it seems perfect for Fnatic to finally lift the trophy, they can't do it. So what's the reason? Roster changes upon roster changes have happened at Fnatic, and yet the problem still persists. That leads a lot of people to put the blame on Boaster, and as the charismatic IGL of the team, it's his job to lead them to trophies. Will he prove he has what it takes here at lock-in? Fnatic's game plans and Boaster's calling are the things that seem to slip the most in important moments. He's had some of the most stacked rosters in Europe, but not set them up to win a title. And now, with arguably the most stacked roster in the world, in his most pressured environment yet, Boaster will need to overcome any mental barriers blocking his path to the trophy, and that all starts in this match against Sentinels. And for Boaster, if they lose this match, what happens next for him? Fnatic are an org whose sole intention is to win. They've made that very clear. And if they feel he's holding them back from a trophy, we might have to say goodbye to Fnatic Boaster. But we're not there yet, and of course we wouldn't want that to happen. So over the off-season, Fnatic decided to upgrade other players to get them to that championship level. Mystic and Enzo made way for Chronicle and Leo, who alongside Durka and Alpha create probably the only super team in Valorant franchising. The firepower, experience and clutch factor these players bring to the table is immense, even to the point where if they don't win a title this year, that would probably be a shock. At least, that's the public perception of this squad. In reality, we don't know how they'll gel together, or whether they're the right players for this team, but if they are, we might just see the first Valorant dynasty. It all depends on how they handle the pressure, and with a city of fans on the other side, it might be harder than they think. The computer seems to be on Fnatic's side in this one though, as they take the first simulated map of Icebox 13-8. They went up 7-0 before Sentinels got any rounds, and Chronicle closed it out with a 1v4. Seems like he's back to his best, but Sacy maybe not so, only going 7-17. Sen need to bring it back with a win on map 2. Can they do it? Let's take a look at the team and find out. Sentinels are without a doubt the most clouted team in Valorant franchising. Winning the first global title in Valorant gave them an almost unmatchable fanbase, and despite a lack of results last year, they've retained that going into 2023. Any match that Sentinels play is guaranteed significant viewership, and with fans come expectations. Sentinels were given probably the most difficult opponent possible in the first round, but if anything, that gives the legion of supporters even more reason to tune in. The player who's drawn the most eyes for Sentinels over the past 2 years is TenZ, who's also the only player still on this team from that first grand final in Reykjavik. We all know how good he is mechanically, and his clips in deathmatch are staggering of course, but the narrative around him has changed. He used to be the hard carry for Sentinels, undisputed best player in the world, and destined for greatness. Then, the script suddenly flipped. Well, he was still the hard carry for Sentinels, but only in very rare wins. The player who had looked like the god of Valorant was suddenly being called washed, probably going back to content creation in 2023. But as the Sentinels roster formed for franchising, it only made more and more sense to keep him, as long as he was dedicated.
You know, we got in that phone call, and one of the first things he said was, look, I know there's this public perception of me that I don't want to work hard, that I don't want to compete. I just want to be a streamer. And I just want you to know that that is false. I want to win. I want to compete. I walked away from that conversation feeling confident.
The question now is whether he can return to his prime. If he can, we know that the potential is there for him to become a great of the game. If not, Sentinels might be the ones returning to old ways. With that question comes another though. What will he actually be playing? Hints of TenZ's KO were shown at the Ludwig Tarik Invitational, but his Jett looked stellar as well. At lock-in, will he be the opping Jett we've always known him to be, or will he have to evolve as a player to perform? Luckily, it no longer all rests on TenZ to bring Sentinels up. There are countless differences between Sentinels last year and now, starting with the coaching staff. Sentinels' signature strategy for coaching was always just to not have one. I mean, they won a title like that, but the game was so young then. Now it's evolved, it was clear that approach wouldn't work for franchising. Psycho was the man Sentinels chose, who brought over two of his players from XSET, Zekken and Def. The promising thing about XSET is that they were a team not built on firepower or player quality. They developed a consistent system which allowed players to shine, even if they weren't previously seen by the community as top level. And as Psycho says,
look what I've done with 30% of your budget. Imagine what I could do with your budget.
If he created a top 6 team in the world at XSET with decent players, just imagine what he can do with incredible players, like the ones on Sentinels. Speaking of incredible players, Zekken has been labelled a prodigy in recent years, performing incredibly well at both international events he's been to. Plus, he's only 17 years old. This guy is a player to watch, not just now, but in the many years of franchising to come. There were some worries around Def, especially with his lackluster performance at Ludwig Tarik, but he's an experienced IGL who already has a great partnership with Psycho and DrewSpark on the coaching team. As long as he can play his game, I think he'll be able to lead this team to victory. Of course, there's a few key players I haven't mentioned yet, the champions winning sacy and pancada. They've come from Loud, fresh off a title, looking for a new challenge. There's no doubt as to how good these two guys are, but with their possible communication issues and an entirely new system to slot into, will they play at their peak? If they do, Sentinels have a real shot at taking this match. The simulation seemed to agree, giving a 14-12 scoreline on Fracture. If this was a real match, it would be a banger. 12-11 to Fnatic, 1v1 between TenZ and Leo, and TenZ wins it to push us into overtime. He then continues his dominance alongside sacy to win the map, bringing the simulated game to a third. This is the kind of match I would love to see. Can you imagine the hype in the arena if this actually happened? So far at lock-in, the passionate Brazilian crowd has made matchups so entertaining, particularly when Loud were playing. If Sentinels was a full North American team, there might not be as much local interest for this match, but with sacy and pancada there, we should hopefully have a full crowd backing Sentinels. More fans in the arena is more pressure on both teams, and especially on Fnatic if the crowd is against them. When it's so loud, it gets much harder to reset your mind like Boaster will have to do if the match starts slipping out of Fnatic's grasp. And don't forget, there's no second chances. If you lose, you're out, on the plane home. The stakes of this matchup are so high. These two teams are especially desperate to prove themselves, but only one can move forward. There's also the NA versus EMEA rivalry, which is bolstered by the fact that no NA or EMEA teams made it out of the alpha bracket. And plus, the sheer number of people watching this match will turn it into an occasion regardless of result. My predictions for the game are that Fnatic take it 2-1 and advance to the next round. Both of these squads have incredible player quality, along with a solid structure that can bring the most out of both teams. For me, Fnatic will probably have a slight practice advantage over Sentinels, given that they've had more time together as a team. I believe Sentinels could do incredibly well later in the year, but at this point, unless they're just playing out of their minds, I think Fnatic have it. And the computer agrees with me too. 13-8 on the final map of Haven to seal it with a hard Leo carry, apparently. But do you agree with that? Let me know your thoughts down below, and check out the Rendezvous podcast for some more opinions on it from me and others. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, drop a like and subscribe, it really helps me out. I've been Commend, and thanks for watching.